to start off with, there is very little movement, very little additional detail at this point about that quadruple murder in Idaho. One of the victim's parents, according to the Daily Mail here, cryptically claim the means of death between two of the students don't match, despite cops saying all four were stabbed to death. And they also are claiming that the Idaho cops ruled out certain people too quickly. So there's very little additional information on this one. And they've said they don't want people theorizing publicly, and maybe that's part of it. But I honestly think it's just hard to even have a theory that holds together at this point because there's so little information. So we're continuing to watch this very closely, and this is just one that the whole community of Idaho is feeling. This is still quite frightened, honestly, in the immediate environs of where this happened. So we're continuing to look at that. And then also, Clay, there was this 83-year-old man who was in a Home Depot. And I saw this today. It's one of these cases where this guy, Gary Racer, 83 years old, a thief, was just doing what we see in so many of these different theft cases. He was filling up his cart with with valuable items. He probably had, I don't know, $1,000 worth of stuff, maybe more. And this 83-year-old worker at Home Depot, he's a dad, he's a grandfather, and he got shoved to the ground by this criminal. It's all on video. And he died from his injuries because an 83-year-old man, a lot of them, it's like shoving a small child or, a baby. It's somebody who is not able to defend themselves. They have much higher incidence of extreme injury from any kind of a blunt force trauma or serious fall. And I hadn't even seen this until today. They have video of the guy. They still don't have him in custody. They don't have, I don't even think they know who the suspect is quite yet. But I just think this is indicative of what's happening all over the country now, where it's been normalized that people can steal and even be violent in the process of that theft. And there's no urgency in these Democrat-run cities to do anything about this. What was that? It wasn't Costco. It was another one of the major stores. It wasn't Walmart. I forget which one. Kmart's gone, right? It wasn't Kmart.
Yeah, Target.
But Target. Thank you. It was Target.
Yeah.
$400 million of theft last year. Of theft. Well, it's like we've decriminalized stealing. That's what's going on.
Effectively, we have. You saw, I'm sure, the viral video. I believe it was from the L.A. area. I know it was California. Of the Apple store being robbed on the Friday after Thanksgiving, middle broad daylight. Guys just run in. I think they were guys. They had masks on, of course, because now you can wear masks with impunity, which we talked about for some time was going to potentially be a major issue when it came to crime. But they were grabbing as much as they could of the iPhones. They get outside. They're not caught. And this is happening everywhere. And the overall response to it is, some of these left-wingers just say, remember when they were writing the stories like, hey, really your possessions aren't that important. Other people are entitled to them. Remember when they were writing that in San Francisco as home invasions were happening? People were just taking things from outside of those homes and carrying them out. This is part and parcel of where we've gone with defund the police. And I was reading in the Wall Street Journal in the last couple of days, Buck. They had a graphic, I think I shared it with you, of murder in the United States. The rates, obviously, we've skyrocketed in murder. But do you know that almost all of the increase is black murders? That is, when you look at the rates of murder, basically for black people, it's back in the 1990s again. The rates of Hispanic, Asian, white murder, they haven't really budged anywhere near as much. But if you look at the graphical data, for black people, the rates of murder are the same as they were in the early 90s now. And as a result, the overall rate of murder in this country is skyrocketing. And people, it's the third rail. They won't touch it on the left side of the political equation. But the lasting legacy of the Black Lives Matter movement has been that far more black people are being murdered in America than were before BLM started. And if you unpack why that has occurred, it's because we have created a dynamic where police are the bad guy. And the reality is, police protect more black lives by far than any other aspect of certainly the government in the country. And when you tell police they can't do their job, the overwhelming victims become black. And that's the legacy of BLM. That's the truth. Nobody will touch it on the left because it's a third rail, and that would require analyzing, and then you can't say, oh, everybody's a victim. But that's what's going on. That's where the murder rate skyrocket is happening. It's in the black community. Overwhelmingly, you are murdered by someone of your own race. And unfortunately, as we've talked about, Buck, even with that Idaho connection, usually victims of murder know the person who is murdering them. It's far scarier, the idea of random acts of violence, but almost always, if you're going to be killed, it's someone that you know, and oftentimes the same race as you, almost overwhelmingly, whether you're black, Asian, white, Hispanic. And this idea of a perpetrator who doesn't know anybody is top of mind because it's so fear-inducing, but it isn't the reality. And it's happening all over the country.
And, you know, there's also been a little bit of reporting about another crime. So just to be clear, the incident with the 83-year-old guy shoved to the ground, he died of his injuries from that. It was $800 of pressure washers that this guy was
this
trying
location?
to steal. This was in North Carolina, Hillsborough, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then you have Waukesha. We all remember what happened in Waukesha.
Oh, yeah.
The media made that story disappear very quickly. Does anyone even remember there was a mass shooting at, I think, was it at UVA recently? No, I don't think they do. Does anyone remember any of the mass shootings that have occurred in the last 2 weeks? They disappeared very quickly. I wonder why that is.
That's such a good point, Buck. The last 3 mass shootings. The one in Colorado, everybody blamed anti-transgender activists. And then as soon as it came out that this guy was, again, I think I got
non-binary,
this right,
a member of the
non-binary,
LGBTQ plus community himself.
Story vanished. Like, I'm not even kidding. I've barely seen a headline about that story since that happened. Unfortunately, the UVA shooting was a former football player, walk-on, who killed members of his team. And then the shooting in Virginia again, right? Wasn't the shooting in Virginia at the Walmart, Chesapeake, Virginia area?
That's right.
Also a former employee, but a black guy. Mass shootings, 3 of them, LGBTQ, 2 black guys, story vanishes. As soon as the details come out about who is to blame, they're gone. And this Waukesha case that happened almost exactly a year ago at the Christmas parade vanished almost as soon as it happened.
Mass murder by somebody with a long history of anti-white hatred online. You don't hear about that very often, do you? Here's how NBC News, though. This is a story about how, Waukesha's having its Christmas parade again. I want you to just hear a part of this segment. Play the clip.
In Waukesha, Wisconsin, the town just finished marching in its annual Christmas parade. Of course, it was 1 year ago that a man drove a car into that crowd, killing 6. Tonight, residents returned, celebrating the lives lost and the town's determination to keep the tradition going. Maura Barrett is there.
Tonight, Waukesha's Christmas parade is back, bigger and stronger than ever. The community turning up in force 1 year after tragedy struck when a man drove an SUV through the parade, killing 6 people and injuring dozens more.
A man drove an SUV through the parade. You hear that, you say, do we know anything else about the murderer here? Oh, wait, hold on a second. The words murder, terrorism, crime, hate crime, motive, white, black. None of this was a 2-minute long national NBC News segment, Clay. I went over it twice to make sure. Not a single time were the words murder, terrorism, hate, crime, motive, white, or black used in the entire 2-minute national news piece. I wonder why that is. I mean, the guy he's going away for life for 6 murders.
Yeah.
It's already over. And yet they don't even say he's a murderer. They make it seem like he got lost because his GPS was malfunctioning. These people are grotesque.
Well, remember the headlines for a while just said SUV plows through as if nobody was driving it. That was the way they tried to
yes,
cover
it was like the SUV was possessed by a spirit.
And what I would say is, and this is such a good, if you're a kid, I know we got young people out there listening. Sometimes I think media criticism is an incredibly valid thing for you to be writing and studying if you were a kid. Compare the way that the Buffalo supermarket shooting has been covered. Every time you see a story about that one, it's white guy targets black supermarket in a black neighborhood, tries to kill based on race. Compare the way the media covered the Buffalo shooting, which is heinous and awful, with the Waukesha story. And the point here that is quite clear is motive matters when it is an awful white guy, right? Awful white guy, headline everywhere. When it's an awful person of another race, the story very often vanishes, or it becomes a story almost exclusively about the victims. But it would be such a fascinating study example. And there's people out there who do media criticism. I would love to see a real in-depth analysis of the way the Buffalo shooting has been covered compared to the Waukesha. And then you can compare Buffalo shooting to compare the headlines for the LGBTQ when it looked like a random white guy, right, had done it compared to when it's a member of LGBTQ.
You don't even have to try hard. In New York City, for example, New York One, which is like the communist local news source, they'll run story and any of the non-right-wing news sources that you could look at for New York City will do the same thing. They'll have, there was a suspect this morning in an attempted rape of a woman in Prospect Park, Brooklyn. The suspect is 5'10", 180 pounds, wearing a T-shirt. And then you'll actually sometimes see that there's more detail than that. But they will not give that
they won't
detail.
give the race.
In fact, sometimes the funniest thing, and it's like, not really funny, but the oddest thing, is when they will do that. The suspect is 5'10", 185 pounds, wearing a T-shirt, but they'll actually have a photo of him on the screen because there's surveillance camera. But they don't want to say it because they think that that's problematic. And you say to yourself, wait, we don't make determination. The suspect could be of any background. Or we just want to know who the suspect is so that we can find him and keep people safe. Moral people don't make judgments about people based upon the acts of one individual. So why does the left always do this? Well, wokeness. Their minds are broken.
Identity politics requires a victim pyramid, and if the wrong people are involved in a story, then they just get ignored. Story vanishes. It really is amazing once you start to see the narrative.